Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to change my habit this evening and speak in English. I hope not too many people mind. Is there anybody who doesn't understand English? Of course, they don't understand me. They cannot raise the finger. It's very good. Okay, so it's a loaded question. Very good. So we are going to start the Beethoven on Steroids concert series this evening. In this series, I'm going to present personally to you 32 Beethoven piano sonatas that were published during his lifetime, and this is important because he wrote some sonatas and some sonatinas that were published later. He didn't want them published, but these 32 works, he was very proud of them, so he wanted to publish them. There is something that is known in music as opus. You know that these are the three sonatas, opus 2, opus 2 number 1, opus 2 number 2, opus 2 number 3. I want to expand a little bit on what is the meaning of this word opus. Opus means simply the order in which pieces of any kind were published. So Beethoven works, the symphonies, the string quartets, the variations, all of them have opus numbers. The first piece that Beethoven ever published, not that he ever wrote, that he ever published, that was ever good enough for him to go and say, this I want in print, I want this in book, I want to sell this, I want people to play this, I'm proud of this. This was opus 1. These were 3 trios for piano, violin and cello, not less than 3 different trios, very long, something like 2 hours of music. He took all of them together. He didn't call them opus 1, opus 2, opus 3. All of them together are opus 1. This shows you already that Beethoven, at the age of 25, when these 3 sonatas are written, he knows very clearly where he's going. He knows already that he's going to be one of the greatest composers ever lived on this planet. He knew already that he's going to write a lot, and he says, yeah, I don't need to inflate the number of my compositions, of my printed compositions. I can afford to write 3 pieces and call all of them together opus 1, and then very soon after that, he wrote 3 big piano sonatas, and he calls them opus 2, at the age of 25. This is 1795. Now you need to understand something about Beethoven. Beethoven was born in the German city of Bonn, but by the time he is in his early 20s, he moves over to Vienna. Beethoven was already visiting Vienna before. Vienna is a big center of music in the late 18th century, in the 19th century. Of course, later we have many composers living and creating there and going through there. It's being like a big capital of creation, not only musical, but in classical music. It's really one of the top places in this period. And one of the people who lived in Vienna, of course, was Joseph Haydn, who was a very well-established composer. At the time that Beethoven is a teenager, Haydn is already in his 50s. A huge composer, many symphonies, many works, very well known. Beethoven comes at the age of 17 to Haydn to take lessons, composition lessons. 40 years of difference of age between them, and they work for 1.5 years. And after that, during this 1.5 years, Haydn is correcting the early compositions of Beethoven. He tells him, you know, this is a little bit too risky. You don't really write in this way. This is not proper compositions. Is that right? A few years later, Beethoven is writing the first 3 piano sonatas, and he's writing dedicated to Joseph Haydn. Look, Mr. Haydn, this is the way to write piano sonatas. I'm going to explain a little bit on each one of the sonatas just before I start playing them. So I will say a few words about the sonata number 1. These 3 sonatas, they are published together. So you can say, okay, these are early works. Everybody knows that the early Beethoven is writing in the style of Haydn, in the style of Mozart. Everybody knows that he still didn't establish his own style. This is not exactly right. If we look at the 3 piano sonatas that are grouped together under this opus 2, there are 3 very, very different creatures. The first one, it's amazing how much difference and how much distance in originality and creativity exists between these very 3 sonatas. The first sonata, you can really call it, it's a very fitting first sonata. I think that it's not chosen to be the first by chance. It has many, many features that connect it to the past. It is written very relatively conservatively, not with too much innovation. The first movement is energetic, but it could also be written by Haydn with many accents and many beautiful melodies. The second movement is a very elegant rococo, slow movement, very beautiful singing, noble, without too many of the surprises that we know from Beethoven later. The third movement is a very modest dancing minuet. For one moment in the middle section in the trio, we have a virtuoso passage when there are scales in 3 voices parallel running, and it's kind of a little bit different. It shows a little bit. And of course, the finale is totally tempestuous. and this is already beginning to mark a little bit Beethoven. The finale is very tempestuous, you see, it's written prestissimo. All of it is very tempestuous, it's like a perpetuum mobile. Because of this finale, this sonata that we're going to hear now, sometimes it's called the Little Appassionata. It already kind of foreshadows. So the first sonata is very much in classical style. A little bit later I will show you and I will tell you how the second and the third sonatas are radically different from this one. But this first sonata is really very, very beautiful music. It has a lot of positive energy and beauty and balance and rhythm, and really it took, you can say, it took really the best of the classical style. There is not one moment that is dead or boring or slow, and I mentioned that especially because this is not the case for the second sonata, but more about that later. Suddenly have a lurking suspicion. If anybody has a mobile phone that they didn't switch off, this is the moment to do it. We don't want nasty surprises. I remember that I had to do something before I start. Exactly. So. Now the coast is clear.